You are thinking right now, and you are probably doing it in words. A quiet voice in your head, narrating, commenting, forming the next thought into a sentence before you have even finished the current one. That voice feels like you. It feels like the place where thinking actually happens. It is not. That voice is a layer. And underneath it, something older is running. Something that was thinking long before the first word existed, and is still thinking right now without your permission or your awareness. Here is what nobody tells you about language. It did not give you the ability to think. It gave you the ability to believe you know what you are thinking. And those two things are not the same. To understand what thinking actually is, what it was before language, and what it still is underneath language, you have to go somewhere most people never think to look. Go back to a moment before you could speak. You were roughly 18 months old. You had no words for most of what you experienced. No word for the feeling of your mother leaving the room. No word for the shape of a face that meant safe versus the shape of a face that meant stranger. No word for the specific quality of silence that meant something was wrong. And yet you knew all of it. Researchers studying infants at this stage of development found something that should permanently change how you think about the relationship between language and thought. Babies at 18 months can track intentions. They know when someone is trying to help and when someone is trying to hinder. They predict outcomes. They feel surprise when expectations are broken. They have preferences, strategies, social awareness, and something that functions exactly like moral judgment. All of it. Before a single sentence. The thinking was already there. Language arrived later and moved in on top of it. But here is where the story gets harder to sit with. In the 1980s, a neurologist named Oliver Sacks described meeting a deaf man who had grown up without any language at all. Not spoken, not signed, nothing. He had reached adulthood in a state that no researcher had ever studied closely. A fully developed human mind with no linguistic system of any kind. What they found was not emptiness. It was not confusion. It was a mind that thought in images, in spatial relationships, in something the man himself described as a kind of vivid, wordless knowing. He could navigate complex social situations. He had memories. He had preferences. He had something recognizable as a self. He just had no way to tell anyone about any of it. Language is not thought. Language is the part of thought you can transmit. And that gap, between what you think and what you can say, is larger than most people ever realize. Now go back further. Much further. Your ancestors 300,000 years ago had your exact brain. Same size. Same architecture. But language, by most estimates, did not reach its modern form until 50 to 100,000 years ago. Which means for hundreds of thousands of years, beings exactly like you were living full lives in complete silence. Not the silence of emptiness. The silence of a mind that thinks in other ways. In pattern, in pressure, in whole-body knowledge that integrates sensation and memory and prediction faster than any sentence can form. And here is the reveal that most people are not ready for. That system did not disappear when language arrived. It is still running inside you right now. Every time you walk into a room and feel something is wrong before anyone has spoken. Every time a decision arrives and you fully formed, with no explanation attached. Every time you meet someone and know, not think, know whether to trust them. That is not instinct. That is not a feeling. That is the original thinking system, still operating at full capacity, underneath the narrating voice you mistake for your mind. But here is the turn that changes everything. Language did not only add to what humans could do. It changed what humans could perceive. This is what pre-language thinking actually was. Not a lesser version of what you do now. A different mode entirely. One that stayed inside the experience instead of converting it into a label and moving on. And when language arrived, it did not just add a new tool. It rewired the default. A series of studies across multiple decades found something deeply uncomfortable. The moment you attach a word to an experience, your brain begins processing that experience differently. The perceptual detail decreases. The nuance flattens. The specific, unrepeatable quality of the moment gets filed under its category label, and the category is always smaller than the thing. One study asked participants to describe a face in detail before trying to identify it in a lineup. The verbal description made them worse at identification, not better. The words replaced the memory. The category crowded out the detail. This effect has a name, verbal overshadowing. And once you know it exists, you start to see it everywhere. The wine you cannot enjoy as much after you have learned the vocabulary for wine. The music that becomes harder to feel once you have spent years analyzing it. The emotion that loses something the moment you name it and hand it to someone else. Your ancestors around the fire, watching the shape at the edge of the darkness. They were perceiving it with a precision and immediacy that language would have blunted. They had no word for what moved in the shadows. So they felt the full, unfiltered signal of it. Every detail, every flicker, nothing lost to categorization. You have a word for almost everything. And in the space between the experience and the word, something real is always reduced. This is not an argument against language. Without it, there is no accumulated knowledge, no science, no philosophy, no civilization. Language is how humans escaped the fire and built everything you are sitting inside right now. But it came at a cost that nobody warned you about. The cost is this. You now live mostly inside the narrating voice. The commentary. The running translation of experience into words. And that voice is not neutral. It edits. It simplifies. It replaces the texture of what is actually happening with a version that fits inside a sentence. And the most important things in your life, whether someone loves you, whether a decision is right, whether something is about to go wrong, those things almost never arrive in sentences. They arrive the way they always arrived. Before the word. Underneath the word. As something that moves through you before your narrating voice has time to catch up. Tonight, somewhere in an ordinary moment, you will know something you cannot explain. A sense of rightness about a direction. A recognition without a name. A knowing that sits just outside language and waits for you to stop talking long enough to feel it. Your ancestors built fire, survived ice ages, and crossed entire continents on exactly that signal. You are thinking right now, and the part of it that has no words, the part that was there before language arrived and is still running underneath it, that part has never stopped. It is thinking right now. You just stopped listening to it the moment you learned to speak.